Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and welcome to another 10.2 PTR patch notes update video. Here are this week's patch notes. First off, Everbloom is going to be available for M Plus testing this weekend, so we'll take a look at that and see how it functions. A couple of changes here to the Battleground Blitz Brawl, which we're not going to cover. Now we have class changes coming in here. Frost Decay. The 2 set is being buffed, and self bounces are now going to grant the damage increase as well, which is going to massively increase its value on single target versus needing to have multi targets to be getting really full value out of it. They also fixed an issue with it not bouncing to Death Knights when used against enemies with a large hitbox. I assume this was like Volcaros. This wasn't triggering that kind of situation. And then 4 set fixed an issue with self bounces, now granting the bonus rune or cooldown reduction. I wonder if this was say not or now. Demon Hunter. We have a change that has been already strike through'd, so I guess it's not happening. Which is... So I guess Spectral Sight's cooldown is going to stay the same. Oh, okay, so its cooldown is reduced to 30 seconds, and haste now affects its GCD. So that's the GCD, not the cooldown. It's not going to be an effect that goes to like a 20-second cooldown if you have haste, but it's going to be an effect where when you press it, you don't go on a weird 1-second GCD regardless of haste, or 1.5-second GCD regardless of haste, which was weird. Demonic duration for demon form reduced to 5 seconds was 6. Elysian Decree has been moved to the class tree. Fodder of the Flame has been moved to the class tree. Fodder of the Flame now increases Spectral Sight's cooldown by 30 seconds. Okay, so Spectral Sight's cooldown has gotten shorter, but it's going to get a little bit longer if you have Fodder of the Flame now, which is what makes Spectral Sight show you the demon, so that makes sense. If you don't care about Fodder of the Flame, you shouldn't have to have Spectral Sight become a super long cooldown if you're using it for, I guess, PvP or something. Seeing stealthies. The Hunt's initial damage has been increased, and its damage over time has been increased by even more, 22% and 30%. I assume this is also going to be something that'll be annoying to people in PvP. I always remember this just like absolutely one-shotting people in PvP back last expansion. I don't know how much that's how it feels this expansion, though. I haven't PvP'd this expansion. Sigil of Flame is now baseline. Interesting. Its initial damage is increased by 200% as well. That's actually going to be really nice for Vengeance initial threat. New talent, Live by the Glaive. When you parry an attack or have one of your attacks parried, restore 2% max health and 10 fury. This effect may only occur once every 5 seconds. So, interesting. This is a little bit of fury gen for Vengeance. And, crucially, this is now a good reason for me to be spinning the boss around randomly. I'm just helping my Havoc Demon Hunter get a Live by the Glaive proc. Unnatural Malice, Relentless Pursuit, Extended Sigils, and Misery in Defeat have been removed. Unrestrained Fury is now a 1-rank talent that increases max Fury by 20, so full value, half as many points. Shadowed Restoration, same thing, full value, half as many points. Illidari Knowledge, almost full value, half as many points. Will of the Illidari, almost full value, half as many points. Rush of Chaos is now 2 ranks and reduces Metamorphosis cooldown by... So this one's actually getting the reverse treatment here. This is now 2 ranks to get the same value you used to get from 1, but on balance, you're getting talent points still across these changes. Quicken Sigils no longer reduces cooldowns. Erratic Fellheart now reduces the cooldown by less of Fell Rush and Infernal Strike, so there's a nerf there. Flames of Fury has been adjusted. It's now 2 ranks and makes Sigil of Flame deal increased damage and then still generate the 2 Fury per target at 2 points. Okay, so a few talents have gotten cheaper, and 2 have gotten more expensive in terms of how many points you're going to have to invest. I guess if you were taking all of these talents, you're still profiting by 2 extra talent points, but that's not as much as we've seen some of the other specs getting, like the Rogue changes. Havoc. Okay, they've crossed out a change that was going to make Dancing with Fate a 1-rank talent, so I guess that's still going to be 2. Blind Fury is being buffed by a little bit, by 20%. Blind Fury also was going to become a 1-rank talent, but that's now been reverted, so it's still a 2-rank talent. New talent for Havoc, Demon Hide. 5% increased magic damage done, and 5% reduced physical damage taken. Ooh, that's nice. That's pretty potent. Physical damage is infrequently the type of damage that the raid is taking. There are fights like Sludge Fist where it is all the damage on the fight, but generally you're not taking that much physical damage. But sometimes you are. Dungeons like Freehold as well. A lot of the damage you're taking in there is Fizz. So, this is useful. A little bit of survivability, and obviously 5% increased magic damage done. That's some mandatory talent probably. Dash of Chaos. For 2 seconds after using Fel Rush, activating it again will dash back towards your initial location. Interesting effect here. So if you're playing the longer momentum, you can just press your Fel Rush twice, right? And stay in the same spot, basically, right? Like you Fel Rush somewhere, and then you Fel Rush back, and you don't have to spin your camera around. So it kind of makes that easier and less obnoxious, right? Less of something that you're going to have to move your camera around and aim yourself for. I suspect this isn't going to be something you're going to want to talent. Like, I suspect this is going to be one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, this seems like a nice quality of life thing. But can I ever really justify taking a talent that I spend a talent point and it manipulates the direction that my Fel Rush takes me when there are talents on my tree that give me percentages of damage? I doubt that the answer there is going to be yes for most high-end content. Scars of Suffering increases versatility by 4% and reduces threat generated by 8%. All right, nice. We need to get this for Fury Warrior, Unholy DK, Frost DK, a couple other specs need talents like this. Chaotic Disposition. Each time you deal chaos damage, there is a 7.77% chance to duplicate 33% of the damage up to 3 or 7 total times as a 2-rank talent. This can't be... Okay, it seems to me like the chance that this would duplicate 3 total times has got to be so small that increasing the total... Like, if I'm reading this correctly, do you have to hit a 7.77% 3 times to have duplicated it 3 times? And then if so, does taking an extra point in this talent just open up that infinitesimally small chance that you could do that 4, 5, or 6, or 7 total times? Or, like, when you roll this 7, does it choose a random number to duplicate between 1 and 3 or 1 and 7, which would make the 2 points worth it? I'm not sure, but as it reads to me, the most obvious way that this seems to work makes me think that the 2 points would be completely worthless, so I'm not sure. I must be misunderstanding this. I-Beam damage increased by 15%. Fel Barrage damage increased by 100%. Again, Fel Barrage is being changed to be sort of like a Breath of Sindragosa style. You press it, and then you're draining Fury and shooting out Fel Barrages, which, in order for this to be good, it does need to do a lot of damage if the effect functions like that, to be worth kind of that Breath of Sindragosa style of pressing it and then trying to maintain it. Isolated Prey now causes Immo Aura to always crit, was 30% increased damage. Interesting effect there, creates a little bit of anti-synergy with crit as a stat. Makes that stat a little bit less valuable. Throwglaive now triggers Cycle of Hatred's effect when Furious Throws is selected. Soul Rend's now 1 point for almost full value. And Shattered Destiny now increases Demon Form duration per 10 Fury spent, was 8, so that's a nerf there. All right, Vengeance. We're starting to get the Vengeance changes. Notably, the Vengeance changes weren't in last time, so I'll get an idea of what they're up to here. New talent, Ascending Flame. Sigil of Flame initial damage is increased by 50%. Again, note that the initial damage of Sigil of Flame was pretty negligible in previous patches, but they've buffed it by 200% in the above part of the patch notes, so further increasing this is definitely nice, and it's going to be nice for generating initial threat, which is something that Vengeance does struggle with right now. Multiple applications of Sigil of Flame may overlap. That's nice. That's a nice way to make it so that there is much less... Like, you can just press Sigil when it's off CD, right, and not be screwing that up at all. Illuminated Sigils. Sigil skills have 1 additional charge. Again, nice synergy here with Ascending Flame. You have 20% increased chance to parry attacks from enemies affected by Sigil of Flame. Okay, that's a 20% increased chance. Does this mean if my chance to parry is 22, it becomes 42? Or does it mean if my chance to parry is 22, it becomes 26 or whatever, 26.4? Is that what we're looking at? Because if it's the former, this is a massive DR, right? Like, if this spots you 20% parry chance, on the other hand, if it just increases your parry chance by 20%, then it's more marginal, but still nice. But yeah, I mean, this would represent a huge amount of physical damage reduction on average in a Mythic Plus situation if it worked that former way, which I assume it won't work that way because of that. And that's just so much damage removed from a pack. Agonizing Flames is now 1 rank talent and increases movement speed by 10% and Immo Aura duration by 50%. So the movement speed is the old 1 rank value and the Immo Aura duration is the old 2 rank value. Extended Spikes is now 1 rank and gives you the full value. Okay, so saved a talent point there. Burning Blood is now 1 rank and increases fire damage by the old 2 rank value, 10%. Another talent point saved. Darkglare Boon is now 1 rank, and Fell Eruption... Okay, yeah, so... First of all, it's Fell Devastation, right? Not Fell Eruption, but yeah, Fell Devastation refreshes 20 to 40% of its cooldown and refunds 20 to 40 Fury, so again, the old 2 rank values. Chains of Anger now increases the duration of sigil effects by 2 seconds in addition to its previous effects. So this is kind of the effect that was on... Oh, no, not on Quicken Sigils. But okay, yeah, okay. This was the effect that was on the sigil targeting talents, the ones that made them target at your cursor or at yourself. Although I don't see any changes to those in here, so maybe that also works. And then Soul Carver now generates an extra soul fragment on its initial strike as well. Okay, so there's the Havoc, well, mostly the Vengeance and Class Tree reworks coming in, although some changes to Havoc. Initial thoughts, this does... I assume there's more coming still for Vengeance, but even with just this, the kind of Sigil of Flame stuff definitely seems a lot better, and you're freeing up a bunch of talent points. And the thing about the Vengeance tree that this last tier in particular made me realize was that this spec really has a lot of good points to put extra talents into. There are a lot of really good talents that you didn't take with one build or another that a couple extra talent points could be really huge for this spec. So these sort of changes that are giving you those extra talent points, I think are going to represent massive buffs to Vengeance that, these don't show up as massive buffs, but I think our experience looking at Guardian in 10.1.5 should really tell us, like, hey, if you have a good talent tree with a lot of good talents all over the place, and then you get to spend 5 extra points in there, like you are going to be insanely powerful for a while, and then Blizzard will eventually nerf you a patch later. But yeah, looking like a good tier to be Vengeance, maybe. Druid, balance. So they've redesigned and then unredesigned Orbital Strike, so I guess there's not going to be a change happening there yet, but maybe that's something they're still going to try and do. Mastery's been updated. Your nature spells deal increased damage and additional damage to targets affected by Sunfire, and your arcane spells deal increased damage and additional damage to targets affected by Moonfire. I'm not sure how this is different than live. I assume maybe this wording means that they're dealing extra damage even if... Yeah, okay, so basically you're going to get some mastery value even if your targets aren't affected by Sunfire or Moonfire, right? Your nature spells deal increased damage and additional damage to targets affected by Sunfire, whereas the old version is your nature spells deal additional damage to targets affected by Sunfire. So this is the new... Instead of like, with this number, 7% additional to targets affected by Sunfire, maybe it'll be 3.5% increased damage across the board and an additional 3.5 to targets affected by Sunfire, making it a little bit less important to get the dots on everything, although it probably won't change the playstyle that much. It'll probably just mean that if you're screwing that up a little bit, you'll be a little bit less punished. Friend of the Phase tooltip has been changed to when a fairy dragon is summoned, your spells deal 10% increased damage for 20 seconds. This is a tooltip consistency change, not a functional change. Balanced spells whose tooltips say they modify your arcane and nature spell damage, like when you get the benefit of both eclipses during CA, provide double their bonus to astral spells. Friend of the Fae does not. Okay. Orbital Strike is reverted to its original design and location in the talent tree. So that is this Orbital Strike change has been reverted. What was this going to do? Call down a bombardment of celestial energy over target area, blasting all enemies, applying stellar flare, generating astral power, hitting enemies in a 40-yard line, and has a 90-second cooldown, a choice with Wild Mushroom. So I guess they've thrown that design out, and it's been reverted. Wild Mushroom's damage has been increased by 10%. The positions of Ethereal Kindling and Lunar Shrapnel have been swapped. Feral. 10% increased damage and Rampant Ferocity. Feral Druids can now cast Innervate in cat form. Relentless Predator now reduces the energy cost of Ferocious Bite by 10%, was 20%, so a nerf there. And Apex Predator's chance to activate against a single target is reduced to 7.2%, but the rate it activates against additional targets is increased. So with Apex Predator, it used to be giving, like in this patch and in previous patches, it would trigger extra kind of linearly as you added more targets, so you would just have it every global in AoE. In 10.2, they're making a change to it where it's going to instead only trigger like less extra often as there are more targets affected by your bleeds, but they are sort of moving it back a little bit towards, okay, it'll be a little bit worse in single target and a little bit better in AoE than it would have been with our last PTR build, but it's still better on single target and worse in AoE than it would have been this patch back in 10.1.7. I'm not surprised to see a little bit of a nerf coming in here. Just looking at numbers, Feral was doing a lot of numbers on PTR, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of the numbers do get toned down a little bit for this spec. Resto, fixed an issue that caused F-Flow to slay Grove Guardians. Wild Growth now costs a little bit less mana, and Regrowth now costs a little bit less mana as well. Augmentation. Prescience now clears on raid encounter and M+ start. God bless. That is very nice. There was already cringe with a 20-second pull timer in raid, which anytime I do a pull 15 and somebody yells at me, I get mad. So I think that is a nice change for already. And then it's super nice given that with their incoming set bonus, they were going to be doing like a 50-second pre-pull. So this is much nicer. Prescience now has 2 charges. Interesting. So I wonder if you'll ever... I mean, this makes the spec more forgiving, makes it easier to play, and is actually... This part is actually a functional buff as well to the spec mid-combat as well. Just moving something to something that has 2 charges means that you're going to miss none of your Prescience cast, right? And you can afford to sit on it on 1 charge and charging up a little bit to then sync it up with when your next Ebonmight's cast is going to be and make sure you're getting full value out of that. So I actually imagine that this is a quality of life buff and a power level increased augmentation in this build. And certainly it's going to make augmentation better when piloted by worse players, which anytime they can buff augmentation in that sort of way, that's good, because the problem with augmentation is that it's OP in the hands of the very best players playing with other very good players of specific specs. So if they can make augmentation better for more casual players, that probably gives them room to nerf the rest of the kit and make it a little bit less OP and mandatory for really high-end content, which obviously none of these changes do that, but they maybe set the groundwork with a change like this for that being more possible without killing the spec for casual players. Devastation is getting a double value on inherent resistance to reducing magic damage taken all the way up to 8% for 2 points. That's a lot of magic DR. And Attuned to the Dream is also getting a buff here up to 6% for 2 points being spent in there. Preservation says Fluttering Seedlings no longer occur from Emerald Blossoms that are triggered from Echo, but their healing has been buffed to compensate, I guess. Hunter. Here it is, the Hunter raid buff. Hunter's Mark now increases all damage taken by the target by 5% while the target is above 80% maximum HP. Developers note, we like the idea of Hunter's Mark highlighting specific targets on the battlefield, so we've made an adjustment to Hunter's Mark to cause it to increase all damage taken by 5% on targets above 80% health. A few quick notes about this change. When applying Hunter's Mark out of combat or before a pull, it continues to have no cooldown. If you apply Hunter's Mark while in combat, it receives a 20-second cooldown. We don't intend for you to move this damage bonus around frequently. Hunter's Mark is still on the GCD with this change. Multiple hunters cannot stack this damage bonus on the same target. So this is effectively becoming a raid buff, and 5% increased damage taken above 80% health. Naively, this is worth 1% damage, right? Like, you're doing 5% extra damage for 20% of the boss's health. A little fuzzy math there. In practice, however, that is the least valuable time to be doing bonus damage on a lot of difficult encounters. If there is an encounter where the boss's health is not super important in P1, an encounter like Razageth, then this would be something where Hunter's Mark would be less valuable once you've successfully beaten P1, although it would be really nice until you've done that to help make P1 a lot easier, right? 5% damage done for more than half of P1 would be huge for reducing progression time there. For a lot of other fights, this is just average value, right? A fight like Jailer, it would be reasonably good. Jailer, one problem with this is that the boss heals for a bunch of its health bar, unless you're really smart and make the boss not heal, when it gets to a low health amount, which means that the boss actually is spending less than 20% of the time above 80% health. So that reduces the value of Hunter's Mark by a little bit. Same with a fight like Sarkarth, actually, you'd be getting very good value out of Hunter's Mark. You'd get, the full value. And then there is the ideal case would be a fight like Sylvanas. Sylvanas has a P1 that's less relevant, but the P1 is more than 20%, right? Above 80% health is more than 20% of Sylv's health bar because she dies at 50 or 45%. depending on difficulty. So my guess is that this raid buff is going to be one of the less important ones. There are going to be a lot of fights where you can basically be like, doesn't really matter if we have this or not. Like that, about half the end bosses they've designed over the past 4 years, you could take a look at Hunter's Mark and be like, yeah, we don't really need this, right? Like this will save us 5 pulls of progression time in P1, maybe something like that. Which, you know, maybe that still has some value to it, but it's not necessarily enough to make you be like, yeah, we need a hunter. And then the other half of bosses, of end bosses they've designed, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's a raid buff that we want, right? That's a 1% damage increase for our raid, which is less than Chaos Brand. It's less than Mystic Touch. It's less than most of the other raid buffs, but you know, it's only a little bit less than Rat Aura, and it's potentially more than Rat Aura if Rat Aura is being buggy-wuggy. So yeah, I mean, this is the Hunter raid buff. I think this goes a long way towards making a Hunter raid spot, if not mandatory. At least you're not going to feel awful if you are including a Hunter in your comp, and you're going to feel like they're bringing value to your team. Shout out to the other mail wearers that are still sitting there waiting for a raid buff, but you know, your time I'm sure will come. And good news for Hunters, very good news. Serve Hunter, 2-set. Fixed an issue that prevented it from buffing your pet. Fixed an issue that prevented it from affecting the first periodic event of Fury of the Eagle. 4-set now causes your next Wildfire Bomb to not consume a charge, previously generated a charge, which makes the playstyle a little bit more like the 4-set from Sepulcher, right? Where you needed to make sure you had a charge ready, because if you didn't, you were just sitting there like, oh, I'm stupid. So increase in the skill cap there. And also it reduces the ability to overcap on it too. So increasing the potential, but also raising the skill floor of this set bonus, I believe. And then it also now refreshes per tick of Fury of the Eagle. Okay. Mage. Set bonus now clears on encounter start. Pretty much anytime I see this patch note, I'm going to be happy about it, because anything that doesn't clear on encounter start is cringe. Monk, Mistweaver. 4-set. Fixed an issue that caused some healing spells to not properly contribute. Fixed an issue that caused some of them to double dip contribution. All right, well, I don't know how this evens out in terms of whether this is an overall buff or nerf to last week's version, but anytime it's fixing issues, usually good. 4-set is being nerfed as well here, though just straight up numbers nerfed to 15% instead of 20%. Healing Elixir now additionally heals if excess healing elixirs are generated. Now restores more health and triggers at a higher health threshold. So healing elixirs changed last build was controversial, which was making it no longer a button you could press and just an auto proc. You're going to get free healing when you generate extra healing elixirs. So whenever you just have it ready and you generate another one, you just get some free healing. But if you're near topped or you're topped, that's maybe even going to feel worse. It heals more of your health, which is going to make it feel better. It's going to trigger at 40% instead of 35%, which is an interesting debate. I've had this discussion before of like what percent health breakpoint is best for abilities like this to trigger at. Like, where is it the most powerful? And I think 40 is probably a little bit high for this, because it starts running the risk of seriously triggering when it's not needed and then not being available when it is more often. So I feel like 35 was more powerful than 40. But 40 has the benefit of if a hit would take you from 39 to 0, healing elixir wouldn't have saved you before, and it will save you now. So there's a trade-off here. I don't know. There's no empirically correct answer for where the best percent health threshold is for this to trigger. 40 is not that different from 35 anyways. Expel Harm now costs less mana. Its healing has been increased by an absolute boatload. Again, they posted our thoughts on this post where they were like, yeah, we want healing elixir to not be an active button, but we're going to move a lot of power into Expel Harm, which is an active button that's underused. So its healing's been increased by 550%. It now deals damage equal, to 25% of the amount healed was 10%. And the damage range has been buffed up to 20 yards as well. So healing Expel Harm actually is going to do a sizable amount of damage. Like, if its healing's been increased by 550% and its damage has been more than doubled on the coefficient there, I mean, effectively the damage here is being increased by 1,250% or something, which is a lot. Strength of Spirit now increases its healing by up to 30%, so they're nerfing Strength of Spirit to make up for this. This makes some sense here. Profound Rebuttal now increases the crit healing of it by less as well. It can no longer be cast on allies during Soothing Mist. Unison now duplicates less of Soothing Mist healing. Enveloping Breath's healing's been nerfed. Invigorating Mist's healing visual is now only visible to the caster. RSK's damage has been buffed, but not in PvP. And Calming Presence is also being buffed, but not in PvP. Wow, by double as well. So that's quite something. Interesting set of changes here to Mistweaver. We are in a PTR cycle, which for those of you who haven't been in one of those before, every PTR cycle, Mistweaver looks really good at the start. Then they make some changes, and they're still coping about it, still looking good. And then they make some more changes, and then they nerf all the healing by a lot, and then it sucks. Is sort of the stereotypical pattern of what they do to the spec. So we are at stage 2 of that process. We'll see if they continue down that road as usual. Windwalker. We've heard community feedback that the additional spinning crane kicks granted by Windfoot were difficult to fit in rotation, and Blackout Reinforcement alone was not an impactful enough payoff. Windfoot's been removed, and the set will now directly grant Blackout Reinforcement, which I literally mixed those two abilities up last time. Mostly probably just because I'm stupid, but also I think partially because of the way the set was worded. Free spinning crane kicks should now more reliably and consistently grant Blackout Reinforcement. As always, we'll continue to monitor feedback around this bonus and appreciate the testing the community has put forth. Also worth noting that Windwalker is just doing a lot of damage on PTR as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's some power taken out of this spec here. Although again, Windwalker is another one of those specs that sometimes looks good in PTR and then often comes out half-baked by the end of the process. 2 sets been redesigned. Free spinning crane kicks grant Blackout Reinforcement, increasing the damage of your next Blackout kick by 150%. Melee abilities sometimes just straight up give you Blackout Reinforcement instead of giving you free spinning crane kicks. 4 sets been redesigned. Blackout Reinforcement reduced the cooldown of Fists, Rising Sun Kick, Strike at the Windlord, and Whirling Dragon Punch by 3 seconds. Spinning crane kicks cast during Serenity now correctly grant Blackout Reinforcement, which makes sense. Blackout Reinforcement is correctly removed at the start of dungeons and raid encounters, and it can no longer be cancelled. Using Cancel Auras on Dance of Chi-Ji without casting a spinning crane kick will no longer grant Blackout Reinforcement, which is very good. That sort of thing should, of course, be destroyed. Paladin, Holy, Sanctified Plates is now 40% less effective. So this is the talent that makes you get a bunch of extra armor and take reduced damage from AoE effects, basically effectively avoidance. And they're making it less effective for Holy. Now, I can see this being warranted, but I don't like and I think Paladin already suffers from this. I don't like the way that their class tree is so different for different specs, and I don't like that this change is doing more of that. With the way that the talent trees are set up, like if you change between Holy and Ret Paladin, or Holy and Ret, or Holy and Prot, your class tree literally changes, like the padding on it changes, which is so weird. And now that this talent is also changing its numbers as well between these specs, it's weird. I guess it's if it needs to happen, it needs to happen. But I don't know. I'm not sure that this necessarily needs to happen. I mean, maybe it does. Does it need to happen just for Holy though, or does it need to happen for Holy and Ret as well? In which case, could we just make this change to Sanctified Plates and then give Prot Paladin something just on their spec tree instead, and then have this talent work the same way? I don't know. Blessing of Winter is going to restore a little bit less mana. Holy Reverberation's healing on the 2 set has been reduced, and it now correctly functions with Mastery. And the 4 set now gives you extra haste as well as its current effect. Ret Pally, Blade of Vengeance now functions as an addition to your single target Blade of Justice rather than replacing it. Nice. Disc Priest, Rhapsody has been nerfed to 10% per stack, was 20. Harsh Disciplines have been redesigned. Radiance now causes your next penance to fire 1 or 2 additional bolts, stacking up to twice. Ultimate Penitence's damaging bolts deal 80% spell power, was 57.5, and healing bolts heal for 330% spell power, was 206. So basically a 50% buff coming into Ultimate Penitence, which is the priests are calling this uppies, where they go up and they start shooting those bolts kind of going off. So yeah, I don't know what to tell you, but priests. Holy 4 set. Fixed an issue that caused the set bonus to activate Sacred Reverence less often than intended. Shadow. Inescapable Torment now triggers at 35% reduced effectiveness from additional deaths caused by the set bonus, and the set bonus now triggers additional deaths at 35% effectiveness, was 50%. Rogue. They've decided to go with the passive Exsanguinate rather than the active Exsanguinate for Assassination. The energy threshold has been changed based on your max energy to a percentage of that. That's good. You're still incentivized, I suspect, to take all the max energy increasing talents, but I think this is probably good. The energy consumption has been reduced by 33%, and the damage duplication has been reduced by 20%. So, in terms of the damage per energy, a slight buff there, but a nerf in the damage per second of the burst side of it. Sudden Demise's bleed damage trigger value reduced to 150% of remaining health, was 200%, and now benefits correctly from Zoldyck recipe bonus. This is the thing where things just explode when they would die to your bleeds. I think a pretty cool effect for like open world content and questing and stuff like that. Not sure, and this, this is a nerf here to the actual effectiveness in real world situations. Although I guess maybe it cancels out now that it benefits from Zoldyck recipe, which of course it always will, unless the target has a really low total health. And Indiscriminate Carnage now prioritizes targets without Rupture and Groat. Hey, that's a really nice quality of life for this talent, actually. That's going to make it a lot easier to apply these to like a 5-target pull or 6-target pull. Outlaw, new talent, Precision Shot. Increases the range of between the eyes and pistol shot by 10 yards. And pistol shot reduces damage you take from the target by 5%. Hey, that's actually a sizable, in a raid situation, if the damage is sourced from the boss instead of being sourced from the environment, which different fights do that differently, then this is quite powerful. This is a nice, 5% DR. Killing spree base delay between strikes reduced to 0.3 seconds per combo point was 0.4 seconds. So killing spray will be, 25 or 33% faster. Subtlety, new talent. Gain 30% increased movement speed for 3 seconds when Shuriken Storm strikes 3 or more targets. Nice. Nice little quality of life. Obviously, this may not be the kind of talent you can take, depending on where they put it. Finishing moves heal you for 3% of damage done. Overhealing is converted to shielding up to 10% of your max HP. Also nice. Again, like this is a large effective health increase in some raid fights and large amount of self-sustain too. I guess it's 3% leech on your finishers. 3% is not a lot of leech. Okay, maybe it's not that big. Although the shielding, in some situations, like in some M+ boss fights, this would be quite large for increasing your one-shot threshold by quite a bit. Shadow Techniques is going to generate an extra energy. Tooltip's been updated as well with no functional changes. Shadowcraft now allows finishing moves to use Shadow Technique stacks only when it will refresh combo points to full. Its tooltip's been updated, no functional changes. And Ephemeral Bond's bonus for healing received has been reduced to 8 from 12%. Ellie Shaman, 4-set. Fixed an issue where Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt were incorrectly highlighted after casting Primwave. Splintered Elements now grants you 20% haste plus an additional 4% per extra target hit by Primwave, rather than 10% haste per target hit. So if you hit 4 targets, you are going to generate 36% haste instead of 40% haste. But if you're hitting fewer targets, you are going to be generating more haste. So that break-even point is, like 3.5 targets is where it's breaking even, and then it's doing worse at higher target counts. But I assume this is going to probably feel generally better and going to make the single target. Obviously, it's a nice buff on single target. Further Beyond can now only increase the duration of Further Beyond by up to 150% of the original duration of Ascendance. Primordial Wave can no longer be used to heal a friendly ally. It's now an offensive spell for Ellie Shaman. The 4-set's been redesigned. That makes sense, actually, for, like Splintered Elements purposes and stuff, I guess, as well. 4-set's been redesigned. Lava Burst burns your target for 150% additional damage over 4 seconds, and after consuming Primordial Wave, your next 3 casts of Lava Burst also hit up to 3 additional targets affected by your Flame Shock for 100% of normal damage. Enhancement, developer's note. We have shuffled a few talents around the Enhancement Shaman tree to increase some available talent choices. We're also adjusting the functionality of a few talents to work with more melee abilities or elemental damage types to make them more attractive to a wider variety of builds. A new passive talent is available to choose rather than Elemental Blast to allow you to opt out of an extra keybind. Love that. Whether or not that's a good option in terms of throughput, I love it when they make those talent tree choices, especially for specs like Enhancement Shaman, that can really feel button bloaty. Just to give players an option to opt out of that. And Maelstrom Weapon Spender to keep track of with Elemental Blast. We hope these changes give you some extra flexibility with your talent points and make some lesser used talents more impactful. Moved some around. We're not going to look at the talent tree builder in this video, but go take a look at that if you want to see. Starter build has been updated due to pathing changes above. Good. Elemental Assault can now also generate Maelstrom weapon charges from Ice Strike and Lava Lash rather than only Storm Strike, which will be added next week's update. Legacy of the Frost Witch now increases frost damage when consuming 10 stacks of Maelstrom weapon rather than only physical damage. Primordial Wave can no longer be used to heal a friendly ally. Splintered Elements, same changes with Elemental, basically. 20% plus 4 per target hit. Tempest Strikes is a new passive. Your Storm Strike, Lava Lash, Ice Strike have a chance to cause bonus nature damage. Choice node with Elemental Blast. The 2 set, they fixed some issues with it as well. And yeah, that's it for enhancement. Nice set of changes here, I like. Resto. Primordial Wave can no longer be used to damage an enemy target. It's now only a healing spell for Resto Shaman. So they are, they've had enough of Primordial Wave being the kind of Covenant ability type feel where, you know, it works the same sort of way for all the specs. They are now just making it only damage for the damagers and only heal for the healer. Warlock. Affliction Warlock. Umbra Fire Kindling now lasts 20 seconds, was 12. Demo, our third week in a row of just a boatload of changes for Demo. All right. Soul Strike has been redesigned. Your primary Felguard learns Soul Strike, which strikes the soul of the target, dealing shadow damage. New talent, Shadow Invocation. Bile Scourge Bombers deal extra damage, and your spells have a chance to summon one. Fel Invocation. Soul Strike deals extra damage and generates a Soul Shard. The cast time of Vile Fiend is reduced, and your Vile Fiend... The cast time of summon Vile Fiend is reduced by 0.5 seconds, and your Vile Fiend deals fire damage to nearby enemies every 1 second while active. Interesting. Spiteful Reconstitution. Implosion deals extra damage. Consuming a demonic core has a chance to summon a wild imp. Imperator, now a 1-rank talent. Malefic Impact, now a 1-rank talent as well. So make 2 extra talent points available for a demo if they were taking those. Pit Lord's Fellseeker damage increased 40%. That is the that ability was not doing much damage in our last testing. Volatile Fiend has been removed. Power Siphon now prioritizes wild imps that are not imp gang bosses or empowered by Summon Demonic Tyrant. The 2 set's been redesigned again. Demon Bolt applies a Doom Brand that explodes after 20 seconds, dealing shadow damage to nearby enemies or shadow damage to a single enemy. Hand of Gul'dan reduces the duration of Doom Brands by 1 second per soul shard spent. So does this just mean, like, if there's an AoE situation, it's going to do less damage, but to more targets? Whereas in a single target, it's going to do more damage? I mean, it's fine if it works that way, but it's clunky wording. 4 set has been redesigned. When Doom Brand explodes, you have a chance to summon a Doom Fiend that casts Doom Bolt volleys before departing. Each Doom Bolt volley deals shadow damage to up to 4 enemies or shadow damage to a single enemy. Yeah, I assume this just means, like, again, it will do more damage if it's only a single target that it's able to affect. That's how I assume both of these are going to work. We'll see, though. Warrior. Developer's note. Bloodbath's cooldown was not correctly synced with Bloodthirst during the redesign of Reckless Abandon for the Dragonflight talent system. This has led to unintended outcomes where certain builds can allow Bloodbath and Bloodthirst to dominate a rotation due to extremely short, unlinked cooldowns. We are correcting this oversight to allow other builds and rotation options room to breathe in Guardians of the Dream. Reckless Abandon's Bloodbath now shares its cooldown with Bloodthirst. So explaining why, but this, I mean, functionally this is of course a nerf, but I think that does make sense. That makes a lot of sense. Then we have some PvP, actually not very many PvP changes. Expel Harm, getting a little bit less value, Starburst as well. Gonna benefit from Mastery, do less damage. And then a UI and accessibility change, which has action bar, spell, swipe, animation has been updated. Cool. Is this the one where it's like your spells coming off CD on your action bar have this really, really noisy effect that you can see? I remember having to turn that off on like on PTR because it was so maybe they're making that a little bit more subtle or a little bit maybe more clear and less. I don't know. I'm interested to see what that looks like. And then there's a new change that they've added as well, which says Mage. Fire Mage fixed an issue with the following crit damage bonuses not attributing the correct amount of damage to ignite when an ability crit. Overflowing Energy, Wildfire, and Searing Rage, which is the set bonus. All right. Those are our patch notes for today. A lot of changes coming in here. I would say happy about these changes. Shaman raid buff when. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember to hit like and subscribe. Check out the links in the description below if you want to go and see more videos if you missed some previous week versions. And if you're interested in looking at some raid testing footage as well for the bosses that have been tested so far. Mythic testing starts this week. Videos from that will be on this channel as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.